Everyone in the kingdom believed Ilara Vane was born cursed. They believed it when the wolves refused to answer her blood. They believed it when the village wells froze beneath her touch. They believed it most of all on the night the royal soldiers dragged her through the gates of Blackthornne Keep, her wrists bound in iron, her dress torn by thorns, her bare feet leaving blood across the snow. The crowd screamed for her death. The priests called her witch. The nobles hid behind silver masks and whispered that creatures like her should be burned before their magic spread. But the moment Ilara was forced to her knees before the Dragon King, the impossible happened. The most feared ruler in the North Kyle Draven, conqueror of wolf kingdoms, breaker of traitor houses, the last living heir of Dragonfire, stared at the trembling girl everyone wanted executed, and slowly knelt before her. Ilara did not understand why the hall fell silent. A moment before, the royal court had been roaring for her blood. Now, every noble, every soldier, every wolf-born lord stood frozen, as if death itself had entered the room. The Dragon King lowered his head, not in pity, not in weakness, but in recognition. His black armor caught the firelight like scales. His golden eyes burned with something ancient and dangerous. When he reached toward her, the iron chains around her wrists began to glow red-hot, and the guards stumbled back in terror. Ilara looked at him through tangled hair and whispered, "Please, don't let them burn me." Kale's jaw tightened. Then he looked upon his court and said in a voice that shook the stone walls, "Anyone who touches her dies by my hand." Before that night, Ilara had been nothing. Less than nothing. She was the girl people crossed the street to avoid. The abandoned Omega no pack would claim. The servant no household kept for more than a season. In the border village of Ashmir, children threw stones at her shadow. Mothers pulled their daughters inside when she passed, and men spat the word witch as though saying it might protect them. She had never shifted into a wolf. She had never heard the moon song in her bones. In a kingdom ruled by wolf blood and dragon fire, being without a beast was already shameful. But Ilara was worse. Strange things happened near her. Candles bent toward her breath. Ravens gathered on rooftops when she cried. Once, when a butcher struck her for dropping a basket, every blade in his shop snapped in half before touching the floor. No one cared that Ilara never meant harm. No one cared that she spent her nights healing injured animals in secret, feeding orphaned wolf pups with stolen milk, and praying to gods who never answered. Fear was easier than mercy. And fear needed a name, so they called her cursed. Her final humiliation came during the moon choosing, when every unclaimed young woman of Ashmir was presented before the visiting noble houses. It was a cruel old tradition, disguised as honor. The strong were chosen as brides, servants, or future lunas. The weak were dismissed. The unwanted were mocked. Ilara stood at the end of the line in a faded gray dress, her hands folded tightly to hide the tremor in her fingers. Around her, girls with shining hair and proud wolf scents waited to be selected. Lady Seraphine Vale, daughter of the village lord, wore white silk and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. She leaned close to Ilara and whispered, "Try not to curse anyone when they reject you." When Ilara's name was called, laughter moved through the courtyard like wind through dead leaves. The old priest placed a silver bowl beneath her palm and ordered her to bleed into the moonwater, proving whether any wolf spirit lived inside her. Ilara pressed the ceremonial blade to her skin. One drop fell, then another. The water should have shimmered silver if she carried wolf blood. It should have darkened if she carried none. Instead, the bowl cracked down the center. The water turned black, and something beneath the surface opened one golden eye. The courtyard erupted. "Witch!" someone screamed. "She polluted the rite." Ilara stepped back, horrified, but Seraphine seized her wrist and lifted it high for everyone to see. "Look at her," she cried. "She is not wolfless. She is worse. She is a curse wearing a girl's skin." The crowd surged. Stones struck Ilara's shoulder, her cheek, her ribs. No one stopped them. Not the priest, not the lord, not even the guards, who watched as though justice were being served. Then a horn sounded beyond the gate, deep and terrible, and every wolf in the village dropped to its knees. The Dragon King had arrived. Kyle Draven entered Ashmir, not as a guest, but as a storm given human form. His warhorse was black, his cloak lined with ash-gray fur, and behind him rode soldiers bearing banners marked with a dragon curled around a bleeding moon. He had come to investigate rumors of forbidden magic near the border, magic old enough to wake things that should have remained buried. The villagers bowed so low their foreheads touched mud. Even Lord Vale trembled when he greeted him. But Alara, bruised and bleeding beside the cracked moon bowl, could not bow. She could barely stand. Kale noticed her immediately. For one breath, his gaze passed over everyone else as if they were smoke. Then it fixed on Alara. The air between them changed. The torches leaned toward her. The horses became restless. Somewhere in the distant mountains, thunder rolled though the sky was clear. Alara felt something inside her chest. Answer him, not love, not fear, but recognition. Like a locked door, hearing the first turn of its key. Seraphine saw it too. Her expression twisted. "My king," she said sweetly, stepping between them. "Forgive the disturbance. This creature ruined the moon choosing with witchcraft. We were about to cleanse the village of her corruption." Kale did not look at Seraphine. "What is her name?" No one answered. Ilara swallowed. "Ilara Vane, your majesty." His eyes sharpened at the sound of it, though she did not know why. "Who are your parents?" A familiar emptiness opened inside her. "I don't know. I was left at the chapel steps during a winter storm." The priest quickly added, "An omen, my king. The wolves howled for 3 nights after she was found." Kael dismounted. The entire courtyard held its breath as he approached the cracked bowl. He looked down into the black water. For an instant, Ilara thought she saw flame reflected there. Not ordinary flame. Dragon fire. Living fire. Hungry fire. Then the water whispered her name. Only Ilara seemed to hear it. She flinched, and Kael's gaze snapped back to her. Something unreadable crossed his face. Concern, perhaps. Or warning. Before he could speak, a shadow fell across the courtyard. One of Kael's soldiers shouted. From the roof of the chapel, a tiny creature tumbled into the snow, a newborn drake, no larger than a fox, its wing torn, its scales pale as moonstone. The villagers shrieked and scattered. Dragons had not been seen in the lowlands for generations. Even hatchlings were believed to be omens of war. The little drake cried out in pain. Without thinking, Ilara ran to it. "Do not touch it," the priest shouted. "It will burn you." But Ilara gathered the trembling creature into her arms. Its blood smoked against her skin, its claws dug into her dress. Yet it did not burn her. Instead, it pressed its horned head beneath her chin and quieted, as if it had found something it had been seeking. The crowd stared in horror. Seraphine stepped back, pale with fury. Kael watched without moving, but his hand closed around the hilt of his sword. The drake opened one golden eye, the same eye Ilara had seen in the moon water. Kael spoke softly, almost to himself. "Impossible." That was the first sign. The second came 3 nights later, after Ilara was taken to Blackthornne. Keep under royal protection. Protection was a generous word. She was not thrown into the dungeon, but neither was she free. Kyle placed her in a tower chamber guarded by dragon knights and wolf sentinels. Servants left food outside her door and fled before she could thank them. The court whispered that the king had brought a witch into his home. Some said he meant to study her. Others said he meant to execute her privately. Seraphine, invited to court by her father's connections, spread a better rumor. The Dragon King had been enchanted. Ilara heard everything. She always did. People forgot servants and prisoners had ears. She should have hated Kyle. He had taken her from one cage and placed her in another. But each evening, he came to the tower himself, not with softness. Never that. Kyle Draven did not know how to be soft. He carried command in his bones and silence like a weapon. Yet he never touched her without warning. Never asked a question twice when she could not answer. Never called her witch. On the fourth night, he found her sitting beside the injured drake, who had refused every healer except her. The creature had curled in her lap, purring smoke. "You should be afraid of it," Kyle said from the doorway. Ilara stroked the drake's head. "Everyone says that about me too." His expression changed, just slightly. "And, are they right?" She looked up at him. "I don't know." For the first time, the Dragon King seemed to have no answer. Their bond grew in fragments. A cloak placed over her shoulders when she fell asleep in the library. A warning look silencing nobles who laughed too loudly as she passed. A lesson in court etiquette given not by a lady-in-waiting, but by the king himself after Ilara accidentally insulted 3 dukes by refusing wine from a silver cup. Kyle told her silver carried old curses. She told him she thought nobles simply enjoyed making poor people feel foolish. To her shock, he almost smiled. But darkness gathered around them. The royal council hated her presence. The wolf lords feared the court's attention shifting from bloodline politics to forbidden magic. Seraphine hated something far more personal, the way Kyle looked at Ilara when he thought no one saw. Not tenderly, not yet, but as though she mattered. As though her existence had disturbed the shape of his world. So, Seraphine began to set traps. First, a maid accused Ilara of poisoning the queen's roses. Then, a stable boy claimed he saw her speaking to shadows. Then, a nobleman's hunting wolf went mad after sniffing her hand. Each accusation brought Ilara closer to judgment. Kyle dismissed them all, but every dismissal cost him. Rumors became questions, questions became warnings, and warnings became threats. One night, the corrupt royal council summoned Kyle without Ilara's knowledge. 12 men and women in black ceremonial robes stood beneath the old dragon's skull hanging above the council chamber. Lord Marek, the king's chief advisor, placed a sealed scroll before him. "The girl must be tested," Marek said. "If she is harmless, she will survive." Kyle's eyes turned cold. "And if she is not, then we will know why the ancient seals are weakening." Kyle looked around the chamber. "You speak of her as if she is a disease." Marek did not blink. "No, Majesty. We speak of her as if she may be the end of us." That night, Ilara dreamed of fire beneath her skin. She dreamed of wings unfolding in darkness. She dreamed of a woman with her face, but older, crowned in bone and flame, whispering, "Do not let them name you monster before you remember you were born queen." Ilara woke, screaming. The tower windows shattered outward. Every torch in Blackthornne keep turned blue. Kyle arrived moments later, sword drawn, hair loose around his face, his armor half-fastened as if he had run from battle. He found Ilara crouched beside the bed, shaking, the little drake circling her protectively. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." Kyle knelt before her, not as he would later before the court, but quietly, in the broken glass and blue fire. "Look at me. I'm dangerous." "Yes," he said. Her breath caught. "So am I," he continued. "That does not mean you deserve chains." Ilara stared at him, and something inside her cracked more painfully than fear. No one had ever agreed she was dangerous, and still stayed. But the closer Kyle came to her, the louder the dragon inside her became. At first, it was only heat in her palms when he stood too near. Then dreams, then whispers, then hunger. When she looked at the moon, she saw it as prey. When nobles insulted her, something ancient inside her imagined their bones turning to ash. She began to fear not the court, not Seraphine, not even death, but herself. The betrayal came during the blood moon ceremony, when every noble house gathered to renew loyalty to the dragon throne. It was the most sacred night in Blackthornne Keep. The royal hall blazed with fire, banners, and jeweled masks. Wolf lords arrived with their lunas. Dragon knights lined the walls. At Kyle's command, Ilara attended beside him, dressed not as a prisoner, but in a deep red gown embroidered with black thread. The hall went silent when she entered. Seraphine smiled from across the room. That should have warned her. Halfway through the ceremony, Lord Marek stepped forward with the old priest from Ashmir. Behind them, guards dragged a chained prisoner into the hall, a woman with silver hair, hollow cheeks, and dragon-branded wrists. Ilara felt the world tilt. The woman looked at her and began to weep. "Mother," Ilara whispered, though she did not know why. The court erupted. Kale turned sharply. "What is this?" Marek bowed. "The truth, Majesty. The girl is not an orphan. She is the hidden child of the fallen dragon vessel line. Her mother was imprisoned for birthing a creature prophesied to wake the sleeping dragons and burn the wolf kingdoms to dust." Ilara could not breathe. The woman reached for her. "I tried to hide you," she sobbed. "I tried to keep them from finding you." Seraphine stepped forward, triumph shining in her eyes. "Ask her why the dragons vanished. Ask her what lives inside her daughter." The priest raised a silver blade. "Let the court see what she is." Before Kale could move, the guards seized Ilara. Iron chains snapped around her wrists. The pain was instant, brutal, burning through her veins. The little drake shrieked and launched itself at the guards, but Seraphine struck it with a spell hidden beneath her ring. The creature crashed to the floor. Something inside Ilara roared, not in the room, inside her bones. Kale's voice cut through the chaos. "Release her." Marek raised his hand. "Not until the court is protected from what you are too blind to see." The priest drove the silver blade across Ilara's palm and forced her bleeding hand over an ancient dragon seal carved into the floor. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the seal answered. Fire exploded upward. The windows burst. The hall shook. Every wolf in the room collapsed, whining, unable to bear the pressure of the power rising from the girl they had mocked. Ilara screamed as golden light tore through her veins, crawling across her skin in glowing patterns like scales. Her eyes turned molten. Shadows of wings unfolded behind her, vast and terrible. The dragon's skull above the throne cracked down the center, and from the mountain beneath Blackthornne Keep, something answered. Aroir, ancien, immense, alive. The court froze in horror. Ilara rose from her knees, chains melting from her wrists. The frightened servant girl was gone. In her place stood the last dragon soul vessel, the living bridge between human blood and the sleeping dragons of old. Fire circled her without burning her. Her hair lifted in a wind no one else could feel. The drake crawled toward her, healed by her presence, and bowed its small head. Seraphine stumbled backward. "Monster." Ilara turned toward her. For a second, the dragon inside wanted blood. It wanted screams. It wanted the hall drowned in fire. Ilara could feel it pressing against her ribs, whispering that every person who had hurt her deserved to kneel in ash. The hunger was terrifying, because part of her agreed. Then Kale stepped into the fire. The court gasped. Dragon flame had killed stronger men than kings, but Kale walked through it, his armor glowing, his face carved with pain. He stopped before Ilara and reached for her not as a ruler claiming a weapon, but as a man reaching for the girl beneath the monster everyone feared. "Ilara," he said. Her voice came out layered with something inhuman. "Stay away from me." "No, I'll hurt you. You already could have." Tears burned in her golden eyes. "I don't know what I am." Kale looked at the court, then back at her. "Then hear what I know. You are not their curse. You are not their weapon. You are not the name they gave you when they were afraid." His hand closed around hers, and the fire bent toward him like it recognized his blood. "You are mine." The hall went utterly still. Seraphine's face twisted with disbelief. "Majesty, you cannot." Kale turned, and his voice became the voice that had ended wars. "I can." Marek stepped forward, furious. "The prophecy says she will awaken the dragons and destroy the throne." Kale's eyes blazed. "Then perhaps the throne deserves to fear her." That was the reversal. The girl dragged in chains became the one everyone feared to accuse. The king they thought they could control chose her before the entire court. Not because she was harmless, not because she was safe, but because she had been alone her entire life, and he would not allow the world to turn her power into another prison. But prophecies do not end, because a king declares love. They sharpen. Merrick fled the hall with Seraphine and the traitorous guards, taking Alara's mother with them. Worse, they awakened the ancient failsafe hidden beneath the keep, a ritual designed by the old council to kill any dragon vessel before she could bond with the sleeping dragons. As the hall collapsed into chaos, black chains of magic rose from the floor, wrapping around Alara's body. The fire inside her began to turn against her. She fell to her knees, gasping, her skin glowing too brightly, as if the dragon soul within her was burning through the human part of her. Kale caught her before she hit the stone. "What is happening?" he demanded. The old priest laughed through bloodied teeth. "The vessel cannot hold the dragon forever. Claim her if you wish, Majesty. You will only watch her become the beast." Alara clutched Kyle's armor. "I can feel it," she whispered. "It wants to take everything." Kale lifted her into his arms. "Then we take everything back first." The final battle began beneath Blackthornne Keep, in the cavern where the first dragons had been sealed. Kale carried Alara through tunnels older than the kingdom, while loyal dragon knights fought traitors above. The little drake guided them, its pale body glowing in the dark. Behind them, the castle shook with rebellion. Ahead, Merrick and Seraphine prepared the killing ritual, using Alara's mother as blood sacrifice to complete the seal. When Alara saw her mother chained between two dragon bones, something inside her almost broke. She had spent her whole life believing she was unwanted. Now, the truth stood before her. She had been loved enough to be hidden, loved enough to be abandoned for survival, loved enough that her mother had endured years of torture rather than reveal where she was. Seraphine pressed a blade to the woman's throat. "Come closer, witch, and I end her." Alara stopped. Kale's sword lowered slightly, but his body remained between Alara and danger. Merrick smiled. "You see, Majesty, this is why love weakens rulers." Kale answered without looking away. "No, it reveals what they are willing to burn for." The cavern trembled. Beneath the stone lake at its center, an enormous shape moved. A sleeping dragon. Not a legend, not a symbol. A living god beneath the mountain. Merrick began the ritual. Alara screamed as the dragon soul inside her pulled toward the ancient beast. Her humanity thinned. Memories flashed and vanished. Ashmir snow, the cracked moon bowl, Kale's cloak, the first time he nearly smiled. She felt scales beneath her skin, wings behind her shoulders, teeth where her grief had been. The twist was crueler than death. If she awakened the dragon, she might save everyone but lose herself forever. Kale understood before she said it. "No," he said. Alara looked at him with eyes almost fully dragon. "If I don't, they kill my mother. They kill you. They kill everyone loyal to you. There has to be another way." Her smile was broken and beautiful. "You taught me dangerous does not mean cursed." Then she stepped out from behind him. Kale reached for her, but her fire gently pushed him back. Alara walked toward the ritual circle, toward Seraphine's blade, toward Merrick's triumph, and for the first time in her life, she did not lower her eyes. The dragon inside her rose, expecting surrender. Instead, Alara spoke to it, not as a victim, not as a vessel, as its equal. "You are not my master," she whispered. "You are my blood." The cavern erupted in gold. The sleeping dragon opened its eyes. Merrick screamed as the ritual shattered. Seraphine fled, but the little drake blocked her path. Wings spread, no longer small in spirit. Alara's mother collapsed as her chains broke. Kyle charged through the chaos, cutting down traitors who rushed toward Alara. But the true battle was not steel against steel. It was Alara against the ancient hunger inside her, the part that wanted to erase every wound by erasing the world. She could have burned them all. Instead, she chose one flame. The fire struck Merrick alone. Not wild, not monstrous, precise. The corrupt advisor fell without a scream. His shadow burned into the stone. The ritual died with him. The sleeping dragon lowered its massive head before Ilara, and the entire cavern bowed beneath the weight of its breath. Seraphine collapsed, trembling. "Please." Ilara looked down at the noblewoman who had mocked her, accused her, and tried to destroy her. The dragon inside whispered for revenge. The girl inside remembered every stone, every laugh, every night spent hungry and afraid. Then Ilara said, "Live with the truth. That will punish you longer." By dawn, Blackthornne Keep had changed forever. The corrupt council was broken. The traitors were chained. Ilara's mother was carried to the royal healers. The nobles who had called for Ilara's death now knelt as she passed, not because they loved her, but because fear had finally learned a new direction. Ilara hated how satisfying it felt. KL found her on the eastern balcony as the first light touched the mountains. Below, the kingdom stirred beneath smoke and snow. Above, dragons circled for the first time in centuries, their shadows sweeping across the towers like living banners. "You should rest," he said. She did not turn. "I'm afraid to sleep. What if I wake up less human?" Kale stood beside her. "Then I will remind you." "For how long?" "As long as you let me." Ilara looked at him then, the feared Dragon King, the man who had knelt before her when the world wanted her burned, the ruler who had chosen her not after she became gentle, but after she became terrifying. "You called me yours in front of the court." His face remained calm, but something vulnerable moved behind his eyes. "I did. Because of the dragon bond?" "No." "Because of prophecy?" "No." "Then why?" Kael reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. "Because the first time I saw you, everyone else saw a curse. I saw a girl bleeding in the snow who still ran to save a wounded creature. I saw more courage in you than in every noble house that feared you." Ilara's throat tightened. "And because," he continued, voice lower now, "when the fire rose, my soul knew yours." The mate bond came quietly. Not as chains, not as command, as warmth, as recognition, as the end of a loneliness Ilara had mistaken for fate. Golden light moved between their joined hands, soft this time, no longer violent. Somewhere below, the awakened dragons roared to the morning sky. Ilara leaned into him, trembling not from fear, but from the unbearable relief of being held without being caged. The kingdom would still whisper. The wolves would still fear the dragon girl. Some would call her queen, others would call her monster. The dragon inside her would not vanish, and there would be days when its hunger frightened her, but she would no longer face it alone. Kale bowed his forehead to hers. "Let them call you witch," he murmured. "I will call you my mate." And for the first time in her life, Ilara believed that a cursed girl could become something more than the story others had written for her. She could become fire without becoming ruin. She could become power without losing her heart. She could become the woman the dragons had waited for, and the queen no kingdom was ready to kneel before. But that peace didn't last, because the power that Ilara possessed wasn't something that could be controlled by willpower alone, and they both knew that. In the days following the suppression of the rebellion, Blackthornne Keep was no longer a monument of the old order. The walls that had once witnessed fear now carried a different kind of silence, heavier, more wary. The nobles no longer smiled at Ilara, but their gazes upon her were more dangerous than before. No normal, only calculation and fear. Ilara began to realize something more terrifying than anything she had ever experienced. When she was weak and frail, they wanted to kill her. When she was strong and powerful, they wanted to control her. And both were equally dangerous. Kael didn't leave her alone for too long, but he also didn't push her to his side. That's what made Ilara even more confused about him. He didn't possess her like other alphas. No command, no binding. But every time she was out of his sight for too long, the whole fortress seemed to grow colder, and she began to realize she wasn't the only one changing. One night, when the moon hung low and red over Blackthornne Keep, staining the stone towers in a color that felt too close to blood, Ilara stood alone on the highest balcony, her fingers curled tightly around the cold railing as the wind tore through her hair. Below, the kingdom slept uneasily. Above, shadows moved vast, circling shapes that no longer belonged to legend. Dragons, awake, watching, and every time they circled, something inside her answered, not with fear, with hunger. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest. The heat was back, not the explosive fire from the cavern, not the uncontrolled inferno that had nearly consumed her, but something deeper, slower, more dangerous, like embers waiting for the right breath to become wildfire. "What are you becoming?" she whispered to herself. The answer came, as it always did now, not in words, but in sensation, a pulse beneath her ribs, a voice that was not separate from her, yet not entirely her own. More. Ilara shut her eyes. That terrified her more than anything, because part of her agreed. A sudden shift in the wind made her open them again. The air changed, warmer, heavier, familiar. "You shouldn't stand this high when you're fighting yourself." Kale's voice came from behind her. She didn't turn. "Afraid I'll jump?" "No." He stepped closer, his presence steady, grounding in a way nothing else was anymore. "Afraid you'll fly." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Ilara let out a quiet, humorless breath. "I don't know if that's better." Kyle moved beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, but not touching. He followed her gaze to the sky where one of the dragons dipped lower, its massive wings cutting through the clouds like a blade. "They're drawn to you," he said. "I know. They weren't before. I know." His jaw tightened slightly. "And you're not afraid?" That question lingered. Ilara thought about the girl she used to be, the one who flinched at raised voices, the one who apologized for breathing too loudly, the one who believed survival meant staying small. "I was afraid of everything before," she said softly, "and it didn't save me." Kale looked at her then. Really looked. "And now?" Ilara met his eyes, and there was something new in hers, something bright, something dangerous. "Now I'm afraid of what happens if I stop holding back." A flicker of something, pride, maybe, or recognition passed through Kyle's expression. "Then don't hold back alone," he said. Before she could respond, a sharp horn echoed through the keep. Both of them stiffened. That wasn't a ceremonial horn. That was a warning. Moments later, footsteps thundered across the stone as a dragon knight rushed onto the balcony, dropping to one knee. "Your Majesty, there's been an attack at the lower gates. Survivors from Merrick's faction. They've regrouped." Kyle's expression darkened instantly. "How many?" "Enough to breach the outer defenses. And..." The knight hesitated, glancing at Ilara. "They brought something with them." Ilara felt it before the knight finished speaking. A presence. Cold. Ancien. Wrong. The warmth inside her twisted violently, reacting like a flame starved of air. She staggered slightly, gripping the railing harder. Kale noticed immediately. "What is it?" Her voice came out strained. "It's like the cavern, but darker, corrupted." The knight swallowed. "They're using forbidden relics, Majesty. Something tied to the old dragon seals." Kale didn't hesitate. "Seal the inner keep. No one moves without my command." "And her?" the knight asked carefully. For a fraction of a second, the question hung in the air heavier than any threat. Kale's answer was immediate. "She comes with me." The lower gates of Blackthornne Keep were already in chaos when they arrived. Flames licked at broken siege engines. Wolves snarled, circling enemies cloaked in blackened armor etched with glowing runes. But what made the battlefield truly horrifying wasn't the soldiers. It was the thing standing behind them. At first glance, it looked like a dragon, but it wasn't. Its wings were torn, stitched together with dark magic. Its scales were cracked, leaking black smoke instead of fire. Its eyes were empty, hollow, like something had ripped the soul out and left only a weapon behind. Elara froze. The dragon inside her recoiled violently. Wrong. The word wasn't hers. Kale stepped forward, his presence cutting through the battlefield like a blade. Marek's dogs, he growled, desperate enough to desecrate even dragons. One of the traitor captains stepped forward, raising a hand. You should have killed her when you had the chance, Majesty. Kael didn't even look at him. You should have stayed dead. The captain smiled. Oh, we will be. But not before she becomes what she was meant to be. And then, the corrupted dragon moved. Fast. Too fast. It lunged straight for Elara. Kael reacted instantly, drawing his blade, but Elara didn't move. She couldn't, because the moment the creature came close, something inside her snapped. Not broke. Snapped free. Fire exploded outward from her body. Not wild this time, not uncontrolled, but furious. The corrupted dragon slammed into the invisible force and was thrown back, crashing into the ground with enough force to shatter stone. The battlefield went silent. Elara stepped forward slowly, her eyes glowing gold, her voice layered with something ancient. That is not a dragon. The creature writhed, trying to rise, black smoke pouring from its mouth. Elara raised her hand. The fire around her sharpened. I won't let you turn them into this. The corrupted dragon lunged again. This time, Elara met it. Not with fear, with power. Flame collided with shadow as she caught the creature mid-air, her magic wrapping around it like chains of light. The dragon inside her roared not in hunger, but in rage. Rage at what had been done. Rage at the desecration. Kael watched, unmoving. Not because he couldn't help, but because he understood something no one else did. This wasn't a battle she needed saving from. This was a battle she needed to win. The corrupted dragon screamed a horrible, broken sound as Elara's fire forced its wings open, exposing the twisted runes carved into its flesh. She saw them, understood them, and then she changed them. Not destroyed. Rewritten. The runes shattered under her will, the black smoke evaporating as golden fire replaced it. For a moment, the creature convulsed violently. Then it stilled, and slowly, its eyes filled again. Not hollow, alive. The battlefield held its breath, as the dragon no longer corrupted lowered its massive head toward Elara, and bowed. Every soldier, every wolf, every knight saw it. The moment a dragon chose her. The traitor captain staggered back. That's not possible. Elara turned toward him, and for the first time, she didn't look like a girl they could threaten. You don't understand what you're fighting, she said. Kael stepped beside her then, his presence aligning with hers perfectly. Not overshadowing, not controlling, standing with her. That's because they never tried to understand, he said coldly. The remaining traitors broke. Some fled. Some fell. Some dropped their weapons, realizing too late that the weapon they had tried to create was standing in front of them, and it was no longer theirs to control. That night, as the fires of battle faded and the wounded were carried away, Elara stood once more beneath the open sky. But everything felt different now. Not just because she had won, because she had chosen how to use her power. Kael approached quietly, stopping just behind her. You didn't destroy it, he said. No. Elara watched the restored dragon circle above them, free. It wasn't its fault. Kael studied her. Most would have burned everything. I almost did. That honesty lingered between them. Kael stepped closer this time. Then why didn't you? Elara turned to him, and for the first time since the cavern, she smiled. Not broken, not afraid. Strong. Because you were there. Something in Kael shifted. Not the king. Not the warlord. The man. His hand lifted slowly, brushing against her cheek hesitant, as if even now he feared she might pull away. She didn't. The bond between them pulsed, warm and steady, no longer overwhelming, no longer frightening. Just right. You're not losing yourself, he said quietly. Elara held his gaze. Not while I remember who I choose to be. Kael's thumb traced lightly along her jaw, his voice lowering. Then choose this. And this time, when he leaned in, she didn't hesitate. The kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was something deeper. Fire meeting fire. Power recognizing power. Two forces that could destroy kingdoms, choosing not to destroy each other. Above them, dragons roared into the night sky. And for the first time, they weren't a warning. They were a beginning. But beginnings forged in fire are never left unchallenged. In the days that followed, word spread across the wolf kingdoms faster than any rider could carry it. A girl once dragged in chains had commanded dragonfire, had restored a corrupted beast, had stood beside the Dragon King not as a prisoner, but as something far more dangerous. Some called her a miracle. Most called her a threat. And in the far reaches beyond Blackthornne, keep where ancient loyalties still smoldered, old enemies began to stir. Ilara felt it before any messenger arrived. The air changed. Not cold, not warm, empty, as if something vast had turned its attention toward her, and was waiting. She stood in the great hall when the first envoy arrived, a wolf lord bearing the crest of the Iron Fang Dominion. His armor was scarred from old wars, his expression unreadable as he bowed stiffly before Kael. "We have come to discuss the situation," he said, his gaze flicking toward Ilara. Kael did not move from his throne. "You have come because you are afraid." The wolf lord's jaw tightened. "We have come because dragons have returned to the skies, and a girl no one understands now stands at the center of it." Ilara stepped forward before Kael could answer. "I'm not asking you to understand me," she said quietly. "Only not to turn me into something you can justify killing." Murmurs rippled through the hall. The envoy studied her longer this time, not with hatred, with calculation. "And if we decide you are too dangerous to leave alive?" he asked. "Kael Rose." The sound of his boots against stone echoed like a verdict. "Then you decide to start a war you cannot win." The tension snapped. For a moment, it seemed like steel might be drawn. But the envoy only bowed again, more carefully this time. "Then perhaps," he said slowly, "we should speak of alliances instead." That night, Ilara couldn't sleep. Not from fear, from the silence. The dragon inside her had been quiet. Too quiet. She sat at the edge of her chamber, staring at her hands as faint golden light flickered beneath her skin. It wasn't unstable anymore. It didn't surge without control. But it was changing, evolving, and she didn't know into what. "You're thinking too loudly again." Kael's voice broke through her thoughts as he entered without ceremony, closing the door behind him. He had abandoned his armor tonight, wearing only dark linen, but the weight of him, the presence, never faded. "I didn't realize thinking made noise," she replied. "It does," he said. "When it starts pulling you somewhere you don't want to go." She exhaled slowly. "It's not pulling me anymore." Kael's eyes narrowed slightly. "No? It's waiting." That answer unsettled him more than anything she had said before. He crossed the room, stopping just in front of her. "For what?" Ilara looked up at him. "For me to stop resisting." Silence stretched. Then Kael knelt in front of her, not as a king, not as a ruler, but as the only person who had ever chosen to meet her at eye level, when she felt like she was drowning in something she didn't understand. "Then don't resist it blindly," he said. "Control it." "I'm trying." "No." His voice softened, but only slightly. "You're surviving it." That struck deeper than she expected. Ilara swallowed. "What's the difference?" Kael held her gaze. "Control means you decide what it becomes." The words lingered, heavy, dangerous, because deep down, she wanted that. She wanted to stop fearing what lived inside her. She wanted to stop reacting. She wanted to command it. And maybe that was the most dangerous desire of all. The next attack didn't come from soldiers. It came from within. 3 nights later, during a royal council gathering meant to negotiate alliances with the wolf lords, the sky above Blackthornne Keep went black. Not with clouds, with wings. Dozens of dragons circled the keep, but they weren't like the ones Elara had seen before. Their movements were erratic. Their roars, wrong. Not corrupted like the first. Controlled. Forced. Elara's breath caught. Someone is controlling them, she whispered. Kale was already moving. All guards to the walls now. But it was too late. The first dragon struck the tower with brutal force, sending stone raining down into the courtyard. Panic erupted as nobles fled, soldiers scrambled, and wolves howled in confusion. Elara stepped forward and froze, because this time, the dragons weren't attacking the keep. They were circling her. Her chest tightened as the presence returned stronger, clearer, unmistakable. Not hunga. A call. Something out there was calling her power, and it was answering. No, she breathed. Kale grabbed her arm. Elara. Her eyes glowed brighter. It's not me. Then what is it? She looked at the sky, terror creeping into her voice. It's something older. The air split. A tear like a wound in reality opened above the keep, and from it descended a figure cloaked in darkness, suspended in the air as if gravity had forgotten him. The court fell silent. Even the dragon stilled. The figure lifted his head slowly, and Elara felt her blood turn cold, because for the first time since her power awakened, the dragon inside her didn't rise. It recoiled. Daughter of Flame. The figure's voice echoed across the battlefield, ancient and hollow. You have awakened far too soon. Kyle stepped in front of her instantly. Name yourself. The figure smiled faintly. I am what remains when dragons forget their purpose. Elara's breath shook. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the threat. You're the one controlling them, she said. Not controlling, he corrected. Correcting. The dragons above shifted again, their eyes dull, their movements unnatural. They were never meant to bow to a vessel, he continued. They were meant to consume it. Kale's grip on his weapon tightened. You will not touch her. The figure's gaze flicked to him. And yet, she is the key to everything you cannot protect. Before anyone could react, the dragons attacked, not the keep. Here, Kyle moved first, intercepting the nearest beast with impossible speed, his blade striking scales with a force that echoed like thunder. But there were too many. Elara staggered as the call intensified, dragging at her power, pulling it outward like a thread being unraveled. Kyle, she gasped. I can't. Yes, you can, he said sharply, forcing her to focus. Don't fight them. She looked at him, confused. They're not your enemies, he continued. That thing is. Her eyes widened slightly. Then she understood. The dragons weren't attacking her. They were being used to break her. Elara closed her eyes. For one heartbeat, she let go. Not control. Fear. The dragon inside her surged, but this time, she didn't push it away. She guided it. Golden fire erupted around her, but it didn't lash out. It expanded, reaching, calling, and the dragons answered. One by one, their movements faltered. The hollow look in their eyes cracked. The force controlling them wavered. The figure above narrowed his gaze. Interesting. Elara stepped forward, her voice no longer shaking. You don't control them. The fire around her intensified. You're afraid of them. The dragons broke free. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to turn. Enough to roar not in pain, but in fury. This time, they didn't attack her. They attacked him. The sky erupted into chaos as dragons turned against their master, tearing at the darkness that held them. The figure's form flickered, unstable for the first time. Kyle didn't hesitate. Now, Elara raised her hand and unleashed everything. Not destruction, not rage. Comment. The fire surged upward. Not to burn, but to sever. The connection shattered. The tear in the sky collapsed. And the figure vanished. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of wings as the freed dragons scattered into the night. Elara stood still, her chest rising and falling unevenly. Kyle approached slowly. Elara. She didn't answer immediately, because she understood something now. Something that changed everything. That wasn't the end, she said quietly. Kale's expression hardened. No. She looked at him, her eyes still glowing faintly. That was a warning. The wind picked up again, carrying the distant echo of something vast. Something ancient. Something that had just realized she existed. And this time, it was coming for her. And for the first time since her power awakened, Ilara understood something that made her blood run colder than fear. She was no longer the anomaly. She was the signal. Whatever that ancient presence was, it hadn't come to destroy her. It had come because of her. The days that followed were quieter on the surface. Too quiet. No more attacks. No more traitors storming the gates. No more corrupted beasts clawing at the walls. Blackthornne Keep stood intact, its banners still flying, its people trying to return to routine. But beneath that fragile calm, something was shifting. The dragons did not leave. They circled higher now, farther from the keep, but always present, always watching. And every time Ilara stepped into the open sky, they drifted closer, as if waiting for something she had not yet chosen to give. Inside her, the dragon soul no longer pushed against her control. It was listening, learning, becoming, and that terrified her, more than losing control ever had. Guile felt it too. He said little about it, but Ilara could see the tension in the way he moved, in the way his gaze lingered on the horizon longer than before. The Dragon King, who had faced armies without hesitation, now watched the sky like a man waiting for a storm he could not yet see. One evening, as twilight bled into night, he found her again on the eastern balcony. "You're doing it again," he said quietly. Ilara didn't turn. "Watching?" "No, carrying it alone." She let out a slow breath. "If I say I'm used to it, will you be angry?" Kyle stepped beside her. "No." "Then what?" "I'll remind you that you don't have to be." She glanced at him, something soft flickering beneath the fire in her eyes. "You say that, like it's simple." "It isn't," he admitted. "But neither are you." Silence stretched between them again, but it wasn't empty. It was steady. Until Ilara's breath hitched, not sharply, not violently, but suddenly. Her hand pressed against her chest as her eyes widened slightly. Kale noticed instantly. "What is it?" She didn't answer right away, because she wasn't hearing something. She was remembering something she had never lived. A voice, ancien, familiar. "When the vessel awakens, the gate will open." Ilara staggered back slightly. "Kale." Her voice dropped. "It's not coming for me." His expression darkened. "Then what is it coming for?" Her eyes lifted slowly toward the horizon. "For what I unlock." The truth came 3 nights later. Not through attack, not through force, but through revelation. Deep beneath Blackthornne Keep, beyond the cavern where the first dragon had stirred, there was another chamber older, sealed by magic even Kale had never been able to break. Until now. The door opened the moment Ilara stepped near it. Not violently, not dramatically, but quietly, like it had been waiting. Kale stood beside her, his presence steady but his eyes sharp. "This wasn't here before." "It was," Ilara whispered. "We just couldn't see it." The air inside was different. Heavy, ancien, alive. At the center of the chamber stood a structure unlike anything she had seen. A massive circular seal carved into black stone, lined with symbols that pulsed faintly with golden light. And at its heart, a throne, not of gold, not of iron, of bone and crystal. Dragon bone. Ilara stepped forward slowly, drawn to it in a way she couldn't resist. Kyle's voice followed her, low and warning. "Ilara, I have to," she said, and for once, he didn't stop her. The moment she touched the throne, everything changed. The world vanished. Not darkness, not emptiness, memory. Visions crashed into her mind like a flood breaking through a dam. Not her memories, not entirely. The world as it once was. Dragons not as beasts, but as rulers. Humans not as masters, but as allies. And at the center of it all, a figure, a woman, crowned in fire, wings of light behind her, eyes like molten gold. Elara. No. Someone before her. The first vessel. The voice returned, clearer now. The bridge between worlds. The one who commands, not follows. Elara gasped as the truth struck her all at once. She wasn't just a vessel. She wasn't just a host for power. She was the key. The one meant to open the gate between dragonkind and the mortal world. And the thing that had come for her was not an enemy. It was a guardian, corrupted, twisted. But once, it had protected this power. Elara snapped back into her body, collapsing forward as the vision shattered. Kyle caught her instantly. Elara! She clutched his armor, her breath uneven. I know what it is now. His voice dropped. Tell me. Her eyes lifted, filled not with fear, but clarity. It's not trying to destroy the dragons, she said. It's trying to stop me. Kale stille. From doing what? Elara swallowed. From opening the gate. The final confrontation came at dawn. No warning. No build-up. Just silence. Breaking. The sky tore open again, but this time, there was no hesitation. No testing. The ancient entity returned in full. Not a shadow. Not a fragment. A form. Massive. Winged. Neither dragon nor human. Something in between. Something older. The dragons above the keep didn't attack. They bowed. Elara stepped forward, before anyone could stop her. Kyle moved with her instantly. You don't face this alone, he said. She didn't argue, because she knew now. This wasn't a battle of strength. It was a choice. The entity landed beyond the walls, its presence warping the air around it. Its voice echoed not in sound, but in thought. You were not meant to awaken. Elara didn't step back. I was meant to choose. Choice is what broke the first world. Its gaze shifted briefly to Kyle. And it will break this one again. Kyle's voice cut through the pressure like steel. Not while I stand. The entity tilted its head slightly. You cannot protect her from what she is. Kyle didn't hesitate. I don't need to. That answer mattered. More than either of them realized. The battle wasn't like before. No chaos. No scattered attacks. Just two forces colliding at the center of everything. The entity moved first, faster than anything that size should move, striking with power that bent the ground itself. Kale intercepted, his blade igniting with dragon fire as he met the force head-on. The impact shook the valley, but even Kyle was pushed back. Elara stepped forward, not rushing, not reacting, understanding. You're not trying to kill me, she said. The entity stilled. No, you're trying to test me. Silence. Then, yes, the realization settled. This wasn't destruction. It was judgment. Elara closed her eyes. And for the first time since everything began, she didn't fight her power. She embraced all of it. The fire rose, but it didn't burn. It expanded. Not outward. Inward. Becoming something stable. Something whole. Her eyes opened fully golden now, but calm. I won't open the gate, she said. The entity watched her, and I won't close it either. Kale turned slightly toward her. Elara. She looked at him briefly, trusting. Then back to the entity. I choose balance. The air changed. The dragons above lifted. The pressure eased. The entity stepped forward once more, but slower now. Measured. Then it did something no one expected. It bowed. Then you are not the end. A pause. You are the beginning done correctly. The tear in the sky began to close. The presence faded. But before it vanished completely, guard what you are, or the world will not survive your mercy. Silence returned. Real silence this time. The dragons scattered into the distance. The sky cleared. And for the first time since it all began, nothing was coming for her. Elara stood still, the last of the golden light fading from her skin. Kale approached slowly, not cautious, not unsure, just steady. It's over, he said. She looked at him, a small, tired smile forming. For now. That was enough. Kyle reached for her, and this time, there was no hesitation, no fear, no question of what she might become. Only what she had chosen to be. His hand closed around hers. Varm. Certain. The bond between them settled not as fire, not as force, but as something unbreakable. You chose your power, he said. Ilara shook her head slightly. No. She stepped closer. I chose us. That was the final truth. Not destiny. Not prophecy. Choice. And in a world built on power, fear, and control, that was the most dangerous force of all. Kale pulled her into him, his forehead resting against hers as the rising sun broke over the mountains behind them. Then let the world learn to live with it, he said. Ilara closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, the fire inside her didn't feel like a curse. It felt like home. And in the distance, beyond mountains, no map could hold. Something ancient watched, not with hunger, not with fear, but with interest, because the story of the dragon soul vessel had only just begun.